All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning into another thrilling episode of Pitch Slap. Right, Dan the man is gonna kick start us off. He's gonna slap us with some cool thoughts and things he's developing and what may be a beautiful story. So Dan the man, when you are ready, hit us with what you're thinking, my friend.
Yeah, so uh I want to just like walk into the room and also set the bar really low because what I have is not so much a story nor an idea, but like a loose collection of thoughts that really haven't like coagulated into anything yet, but might stick together. So um I'll spit some thoughts at you and maybe you could help me see a story in the thoughts. Yeah, so this I'm gonna start with one thought or like one question I had. Um, one thing I was thinking is, what happens when, due to global warming, like everything gets flooded, and like what happens to cemeteries, when all that happens? Like when everything is underwater, like what happens to the cemeteries? And it turns out, um, there's some like real life examples of flooding caused by global warming already. Um, and like what has happened to cemeteries. So I'll share like one example that kind of got some, neurons firing. So in 2016, in Louisiana, there was, a pretty big flood, and what happened was that it caused caskets to rise out of their graves. So literally, you had like caskets just like floating down like the interstate, and people, regular schmoes and like officials had to like wrangle these floating caskets and try to identify who was in them and like you know um, contact the relatives if they could find them. So it was a pretty big mess. So I actually was reading an article before our episode today, and one of like the police officers, that was interviewed said, if if a cemetery disappears, most people aren't terribly concerned, but if they're seeing a bunch of bodies, that's when they get concerned, right? So, um, you know, I think that's sort of the future of cemeteries, um, especially when it comes to like global warming. You know what I mean? Um, especially cemeteries that are threatened, by global warming that are sort of in these low-lying areas. Um, what's going to happen to them? Are we going to dig up these graves and, um, you know, move them to some other place, or are we gonna just like let them lie, and just sort of like start fresh with with a new batch of dead people, um, so there are efforts to like relocate a lot of graves, but the problem, as you might imagine, is money, right? It costs a lot of money to dig up a grave and to find a new spot for you know these caskets, so um it's a big problem. Um, so that was one question I had, It's like what happens to cemeteries when everything's underwater? What do we do with them? It turns out it's a big problem. And nobody really has a clear answer. So that was one. Um, Another thought that sort of stuck to that, I was thinking like when cities are partially underwater, I'm thinking that, you know, probably won't be so fast that, you know, people won't be able to gather their stuff. But I think there's going to be probably some efforts for people to try to like reclaim their stuff that's been flooded, whether it's to um, try to gather stuff from beneath the water, gather their belongings, things like that. and I assume that the people who will be able to do that are like rich people. You know what I mean? Like it's not the poor people or like the middle class people who are going to have the technology um, or just the means to reclaim their stuff. You know, um, it's the people with money who are going to be able to do that. You know, so that was a thought. um, and also with global warming, not only is the tide going to rise and there's going to be a lot more floods, but the water's going to be a lot more dangerous as well. And there's going to be a lot more pollution. Um, and I was thinking, like, who's going to have to, like, deal with all of that? It's probably going to be, no surprise here, not wealthy people, but, poorer people are going to have to, like, deal with that, So um, they're probably going to be integral to cleanup efforts. Of course, it'll probably be technology to aid with that as well. We hope, but I think the people who are going to experience um, the problem firsthand is people without a lot of money. So I don't know why I'm fixating on this idea of rich people and poor people because it's not a dichotomy like that. But yeah, I don't know. These ideas were floating around my mind. Um, I also was thinking of, how people in prison, in the prison system do like, community cleanup, community beautification, like they clean up highways, they clean up parks and stuff. I was thinking, what if this was just like a what if scenario? Like, what if the people who are part of like the cleanup efforts, are from the prison system. You know what I mean? It makes sense to a certain extent. Like, it's not something I would I would want to implement, but I feel like in our economic system that sort of makes sense. Like who's going to be doing the work? People who will work for like barely any money.
Well, I mean,
uh,
no, it makes sense. Mike Bloomberg had prisoners doing calls for him.
oh,
And
really?
that's just in the last presidential election. So I mean,
Yeah,
yeah, what you're saying makes perfect sense. If a presidential candidate's having prisoners make phone calls like at a phone bank, you know what I'm saying?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Then yeah, man, no, that makes perfect sense what you're talking about.
No, like seriously. These people have to make money somehow, right? But I think a lot of the prison population gets exploited for their work. You know what I mean?
Oh,
They're like,
definitely.
we're gonna pay you practically nothing, so that you could
Essentially,
do work that's potentially, work that nobody else really wants to do, um, and sometimes is potentially dangerous. You know what I mean? Um, so I had all of these thoughts in my mind. Then an analogous thought that really I don't even know if it sits well with this stuff, but I was having like a Salem's Lot sort of. I don't know if you're familiar with
oh
the
yeah,
movie Salem's
Stephen
Lot.
King's like first book, man.
Yeah,
Vampires.
yeah, but I was just it's not even so much vampires, but I was just thinking of like someone finding a casket or something and hearing like a kid crying inside it and like don't open that casket. You know what I mean? Like, um,
Yes.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So that was a thought. And then I don't know. I was thinking a lot about the movie Manchester by the Sea, um,
Okay.
which I don't know if you've seen. It's quite a depressing movie. I would not recommend it if you
I
have not seen it.
I have seen it. I don't like that movie
Yeah,
at all.
yeah,
I
it's
think that kid's a total dipstick. Granted, what he's going through is rough, but he's an asshole. I didn't feel
yeah,
bad for him. I was like, you suck, kid.
definitely. Like the kid was an asshole in the movie. Um, But the thing that I was thinking of with Manchester by the Sea is that you have really like a main character who um, is dealing with, a lot of guilt and a lot of grief. He I don't know the actor's name. I forget it.
Casey Affleck.
Yes, how he was involved in his children's death. You know, um, I mean, the whole movie is just this really grim look at like guilt and grief. So I was thinking, it's not quite a story, but I was thinking, possibly a main character. If I was gonna turn this into a thing, possibly they are a prisoner who's been tasked. They're part of like a task force to help like pick up um either the water or like they're part of like some effort in I don't know whether it's a whole effort to help get rid of these caskets that are rising or these bodies that keep on coming up, or if it's something more innocuous like they're part of an effort to like reclaim property for the rich people, and they just stumble on like a casket, like a
Yes.
floating casket. um so I was thinking, this prisoner might be dealing with a lot of guilt themselves, possibly, especially if they find a casket and and if I take it into the horror realm where like they hear like a kid crying inside, um, possibly, I don't know. I'm diving into the realm of the metaphorical, but like if they did something like Manchester by the Sea, where they were part of a younger person's death, perhaps it was like involuntary manslaughter, and that's what they're in prison for. Um, you know, them finding a casket and hearing someone like a kid crying could be a story about grief, could be about guilt, so again, this isn't a story so much as like a bunch of thoughts that I was like, oh, maybe they stick together, but not really. So let me know what you think, Steph. I am happy. Again, I don't know if I'm gonna do something with this, but let me know your thoughts.
Well, firstly, man, like this is a lot of potential here. You know, the minute when you start talking about like how you've been doing research and reading about it, like the thing in 2016, right? Like you have officials, random average Joes just wrangling caskets and such, and then talking about the idea of like, uh, like, oh, do they try and put everyone back where they go, or they're just like, oh, well, we have lots now, so like we can charge people more money for that. Like it is a business. Death is a business, which is kind of scary. So like I feel like you got like so many really cool things, and the fact that you at the end of what you were talking about was like diving into the horror thing. So is it cool if I like spit
Run
some
with it.
spit something at you?
Run with it,
All right,
Steph.
buddy. So, like, you talked about your main character being a prisoner, right? Now, obvious. I don't know when time period you'd have this set, but so, like, let's say, for instance, like this gentleman, was or female, whatever have you, uh, was in like a gang war per se, and like accidentally shot a kid, right? Which landed them in jail, right? So
Mhm.
now they're in jail. Like they never intended to shoot that kid. They never shot a gun before, right? This was like initiation or like, hey, I'm trying to do this so I have a family, that kind of thing. And then one thing led to another, and now they got that. So they're in jail. They're probably down south somewhere, from just based on the research you shared. Um, and they got on this crew, right? This unit, like casket reclamation actor. They're like, oh, we gotta go get like the Jimmies or the dead bodies, whatever, the dead body gang, the casket crew or something. And they're like, what's that? And it's like when the floods come and like Noah decides not to welcome you on the ark, you guys gotta get your asses out there and get the rest of them or something like that. So I envision that this person is part of a prison, and this prison does business with rich people. And one of the rich people who has prisoners like work on their lawns, that kind of thing, is a like a cemetery. It's like a cemetery. So when it floods, not only do they have the same people who were mowing the lawns, they have those guys out in like the mud and the crap, like dealing with that, so they don't have to, nor they have to pay anybody, right?
Mhm.
Really. And you mentioned like this one, don't open this casket. What's in that casket? Like, what do you want? Do you want to go down this horror route? Like, oh, don't open that because like maybe there is a monster esque thing. Like, do you want there to be a monster esque thing?
I don't know. I don't know stuff. Again, it was just like a separate idea. It could possibly not even fit into a story that but what would interest you? Because I think it is maybe like an interesting clash of ideas, but what
I
are your
mean, you got a
thoughts?
lot of ways you can go with this. So I think if you go this way, right, like there's a foreman who works on the cemetery, right, like a real good old boy, right, like Merle Dixon from like The Walking Dead, like Michael Rooker, right, Yondu. That dude is the foreman of the cemetery. He oversees all this stuff, right, and he's crazy. And
Mm,
he's like, y'all, like, he tells them to stay away from this one specific area, right? Because, like, their ancestors did, like, just like this bad juju. Don't be going over there, you hear me? I don't even go over there. Not even if I'm drunk, right? That kind of thing. So, whatever's in that. So then the flood happens, and you have your main character, and they're going after this specific casket that, like, you're not supposed to touch. Well, he hears, like, the kid crying, right? And, like, triggers like his memories of what he did, so he opens it and unleashes something, right? So that's
mm,
one way. The other thing you could do is say like these people who own the cemetery have been robbing people like corpses, like jewelry, valuables that are put in the casket, and they're hiding it in another casket. So he's like, and then when the flood happens, they didn't move it. So these prisoners find this money and stuff. So and then they hide it somewhere. And then like the foreman, Merle Dixon, and the owner of the cemetery are like, "Where is this?" And then they're like, "Well, the last people who were here were like the casket crew or something. Maybe they know something." And then it creates this whole like thriller detective thing.
yeah,
Or
yeah.
the other one is like they open it and it's like a monster or something, and then like I don't know, maybe over the course of the night, as they're trying to do the whole casket thing, this monster's like awakening other like dead people, and then the casket crew's got to fight like said supernatural force or whatever, what have you.
Mm. Yeah, no. First off, I've said this in other episodes, but like the fact that you can take sort of like all these disparate ideas and just sort of run with it. I wish I had I wish I had that sort of like quick thinking.
No, Dan,
So,
you're overly kind, man. But like, you have all these pieces right here. You know what I mean? Like, you have all of this, and as you were saying it, I'm just thinking, like, dude, you like so many possibilities, and it's like, this is an awesome idea. Like,
yeah,
whatever way you go with it, it's awesome. And the fact that you've tied it to like real life examples, like, hey, this is something that happens, and that is a very real question. What do they do? You know what I mean? Or like,
yeah.
is it right then to charge people money for spots where someone else was put to rest? You know what I mean? Like,
Hmm.
is that cool? No, that's not really a fair business model. I'm not sure, you
Yeah,
know? So like, this is great. I love this.
yeah. Thank you. First off, I really liked the character that you sort of like pulled out. Like someone who was part of a gang and you know hurt a young person, killed a young person, and yeah, I thought that was an interesting character, and that sounds like an interesting character to me, and I like the idea of like them going on a boat, like an ark. you
Hmm.
know, I thought that was a really cool idea. Yeah, and I had a thought, like I didn't even mention it, but you sort of like pulled it out of my brain, I think, or just came up with a better version of it. But I also had like another idea of um, you know, people actually just going underwater to retrieve a bunch of jewelry and like riches, like just a gang of not a gang, like a group of poorer people being like, okay, we're gonna like get this and get some money for it, you know what I mean? Um, and sort of like just plummeting the depths, trying to get something that they can pawn. You know what I mean? So I liked your the way you had that story about people taking all of the jewelry and valuables and putting it into one casket, and then being like, "Where'd the casket go?" You know what I mean? I thought that was a really cool concept. Um, and sort of being like a thriller, like you described. So I like I like all of these ideas. I don't know if I will actually commit to a story here. So yeah, but I'm liking everything you're putting down. It's all very compelling to me.
Well, I like your idea too. You know what I'm saying? Like how you pitched it, right? Like these guys who kind of watch for, like, these floods to happen, right?
Mhm.
Like in Homecoming, Spider-Man Homecoming, right? Like Michael Keaton's character, right, is preying on the wreckage, right, to make money. It's kind of like that. Your everyday people who's kind of got a bum deal are just like they're dead. They're not taking it with them. We're going to. Right, so
Yeah,
then like maybe they run like snorkel, like you know what I'm saying, like people who go down south and they like anywhere really tropical, but like they do snorkeling, they do fishing, they have that kind of stuff, right? And they're getting hit hard, so maybe they're down there, right, trying to get what they can, and they encounter something, otherworldly,
yeah.
like you said with this box. That's another perfect thing that could happen. So any way you do it, I think you're gonna hit it out of the park with this. Um, and I guess like selfishly, you know, horror is something I know like you are really 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 good at. So like I kind of want to see them fight something like kind of crazy, but at the same time I know you can write like dark and like kind of cat and mouse stuff as well. So I think any of those, like, either way it's going to be good. It's going to be real good.
Well,
So even if like not right now you're not like, yeah man, I'm going to write this, hope maybe one day you're like, yeah, I'm gonna watch that video, and then bam,
yeah. No, thank you for all of these ideas. I, like if I had the energy in me to write, maybe I would write it, and maybe down the line I will be, So I do appreciate you engaging these ideas, uh, you know, wholeheartedly. So
No,
thank you,
of
Steph.
course, man. But really, like, yeah, keep this going, man. If I was a Hollywood exec, I'd steal your trash. Be like, what is Dan thinking? Yes, this and this,
Well,
this works.
I definitely have a lot of trash, so if anybody wants to steal it, be my guest.
Yeah, but you gotta pay him for it, cause it's like this is some primo stuff, and it's not necessarily trash by any means.
Hmm.
It's primo.
Um, yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you. I don't always produce primo trash, but when I do, you point it out to me.
It's far from trash, my friend. I promise you that.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Now, real quick though, Dan, like if say this does you roll with this, right? And down the road they're like, "Ah, someone watches this is like, "Yo, we're into this. Like we want that." Right? Who would you be like, "Okay, but only if so and so directs it and only if so and so, like who would you have play your main character?" Right? Like this inmate you're talking about, and who would you have direct it?
I have no idea, Steph. I have no idea just because it's not a story yet. Hmm. Let's throw out a wild card.
Yes.
Okay. I want John Hughes to direct it.
Beautiful.
Yeah. And I want God, who's a wild card I can throw in for I don't know. I want Jane Krakowski to play to
Jane
play the prisoner.
Krakowski.
Yeah. I don't know why I thought Jane Krakowski was the wild card I was reaching for, but yeah, John Hughes and Jane Krakowski.
I feel like
Those are my
we're
picks.
about to see some growth in like their what they can handle.
Yeah,
You know.
they are spanning their range.
Yes. Yes. I think they could
Yeah,
do that. So Jane Krakowski, if you're listening, I hope
and I
you.
want Tina Fey to write it,
I think
to
she could
adapt
do
it.
dark. I
Yeah,
could. She could do that. So Tina, or Miss Faye, sorry, and Miss Krakowski, if you ever watch this, uh, you know who to call. Dan the man. He's got your big comeback coming.
yes,
You
yeah,
know, and R.I.P. John Hughes.
yeah. Maybe that's who they resurrect.
John Hughes comes
It's
back.
sort of meta.
Yes, yes. They robbed the. It sounds like a dark Goonies thing. Like, huh?
Yeah,
We're gonna mess with John Hughes's grave.
yep. Dancing on John Hughes's grave.
I'll show you pretty
Tentative
in
title.
pink.
Exactly.
Oh, that's
Well,
fantastic.
sorry, I know I just goofed off, but I'm sticking with it.
I like that, man. Stick to those guns. John Hughes film. Um,
Yes.
is there any any last minute thoughts, Dan?
No. I think I'm good.
All right,
Thank you, Steph.
groovy, my friend. Well, ladies and gentlemen, you heard another fascinating tale here, and we hope you tune in next week.
For Stefan's episode of Pitch Slapped.
Until then, stay gold.
Stay gold.